particularly as I've grown in the company, the expectation of my leadership skills has changed. When I came into the company as a supervisor, obviously I was leading more of a process more than people.
Sure.
As I've grown, it's turned more from process to people.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, my name is Ahmad Ishad Thompson, and I am the host of the iLEAD podcast, the place where leaders come to learn, empower, adapt, and disrupt. In this podcast, in this space with me today, we are joined by the incandescent, the incomparable, my friend, my brother, Mr. Jonathan Neil Hanna. Before I introduce you to Jonathan, though, I want to take this time to bring you in closer. The purpose of this room, the purpose of you tuning into this podcast today and whenever you do, is because you want to be edified as a leader. You want to see yourself evolve. You want to see yourself elevate as a leader. And this is the place to do it. This world that we're living in right now is in a leadership crisis. That's the way I frame it. The world right now is in trouble. But the world also has a solution. And that solution is you. That solution is me. That solution is us. This is the place we come to learn, empower, adapt, and disrupt. To disrupt the status quo, to unlearn all that we've learned, to relearn what we need to, and to start afresh, to start our journey into leadership afresh. It is such an honor to welcome you to the conversation today. Ladies and gentlemen, I've known this young man, Jonathan Neil Hanna, since we were about 13 years old. And I had no idea that we would be who you see today. I had no idea that we would one day make sense.
Right.
That we would one day be adulting, as they say, that we would one day be in charge of people's lives. Like, this is incredible to me. And so today, we're going to have a real-life conversation about what I call the diary of a millennial leader. And I want to take this time now to welcome you, Jonathan, to the conversation. Welcome to the iLEAD podcast, brother.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being here and the opportunity to discuss leadership, because it's something that's so critically important to each and every day life, but also the nation at large, and we are here to change the world. So
absolutely
happy to be here and to share some nuggets and have the conversation.
Yes. You said that we are here to change the world. We are indeed world changers.
Yeah.
The thing about changing, you know what? My bad. Because you are already starting with fire, so let's revert a little bit.
Right.
Jonathan, tell our audience, who is Jonathan Neil Hanna? Who are you?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a believer. I think, without God directing my path and ordering my steps, I wouldn't be where I am today. So that's first and foremost. I owe it all to Him. We came up as a young boy with that faith, and I've been taught that faith, and I've seen that faith in action most recently in my life. So I have to start there to begin the conversation. I'm a husband to my beautiful wife, Tia. I'm a dad to two young kids, Marley and Noah. And it's like you said, who would have thought, 20 years ago we would be here today. And now I'm in a space in terms of my professional life as a leader in my organization. And, I really take that role seriously, because I realize not only do I impact my home life and, I'm leading my family, but I'm also leading a group of some of what I consider to be the best professionals in the airport industry. And so it's just an honor to do all of those things. I get to do it simultaneously. I thank God that He's given me the opportunity to do that. And so while I'm here to empower and teach a little bit, I'm also here to learn. Absolutely. Because as a leader, I think the most important thing is that you never stop learning.
100%.
Yeah.
So I want to start with two things. The first thing is, 20 years ago, we were running around in our 7th grade Spanish class, chasing one another, and we got in trouble.
Yes, we did.
How do you go from that day in 7th grade to the vice president of operations at NASA Airport International Company?
So at NAD, in my role as vice president of operations, like I said, I get to lead a team of just over 100 individuals. So it's a very large role that encompasses the airside. So for those that might not know, the airside as well, the runways and taxiways are. The terminal, everybody knows where the terminal is, and then the land side as well, which is all the traffic coming in, parking lot areas.
So you run the airport? Essentially.
Essentially, yes. In some
So
ways,
I am saying that Jonathan runs the airport. He has to be politically correct.
yes.
And give everybody their homage.
Yes,
Sure.
but well, yes. But coming from that time in SAC to where we are now, it has been such a massive learning experience. First and foremost, getting that formal education, going to college. I was fortunate enough that I was able to get a scholarship and go off to college and get both my bachelor's and my master's degrees. But also, too, it gave me an opportunity to network. And I think that's one of the first things if we're going to start anywhere. You have to network. You have to get out there. You have to put yourself out there and meet people. And not only people in your respective industry, but people from different industries because it gives you such a wide-ranging perspective into your specific industry, and you can adopt things from other industries and bring it into yours, right? So from that period, it was just a learning opportunity. It was trying to learn as much as I can, not only in one specific area, but I'll give you a good example. When I was an intern, I interned at the busiest airport in the world, the Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport in Atlanta. I was there for about 8 or 9 weeks. But I literally touched every aspect, from their art program to the airside and being on the runway to learning how they deal with contracts. So it just gave me this really wide-ranging perspective, and it made me realize, you learn things in college, but it's nothing like that really hands-on experience. And so it's just been a constant learning and growth for me since the day we left SAC, really.
Yeah. You mentioned learning as a part of your success story, I guess, if you put it that way. How important is it for people to truly learn as they go? How has that been a component of your success to date?
Critically important. I mean, from my perspective, particularly for the industry that I'm in, things are rapidly changing almost on a daily basis, on an annual basis, regulatory changes. And so it is imperative that we continue to learn. Obviously, those are some things that are just part of the job. It's no different from a doctor. It's no different from a pilot. You have to continue to know the environment within your work, within which you're working, the machines that you're working with. So it's critically important. But part and parcel to that learning is also looking at, like I was referencing earlier, different perspectives and incorporating that into your own industry. So a good example of that is we work as an airport. We serve primarily tourists. Tourism is the biggest industry, in the country. But we work hand in hand with a number of different tourism organizations to bring airlift into the country because, again, if we are an airport that's serving a tourist destination, it is imperative that we work with the hotels. It's imperative that we work with the Ministry of Tourism and all these other sort of tourism boards and agencies to learn how we can work together and learn from each other, because what impacts us impacts them and vice versa, right? So it's just a constant dialogue. It's a partnership, obviously, working with people, but that learning is critical to what we do each and every day.
Absolutely. I think I always say to my clients, to my team members, that when it is that you've stopped learning, you have stopped living. To be in a position of learningness, if you will, means that you're dead.
Right.
So I want to say that to you again. If you are not learning, that means that you're dead. The alternative to learning is to be dead.
Right.
It's as simple as that. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no in between. How have you taken, because there's some things that we learn that no longer serve us. As we evolve, as we elevate, as we expand as individuals, what we once knew, we realize, wow, this isn't as true as it was before. How do you relearn or learn again? How do you continue your learning journey? What are you doing specifically to do that?
So for me, it's one, being in some of these things that we're doing right now, right? You and I have had numerous discussions about leadership specifically, and particularly as I've grown in the company, the expectation of my leadership skills has changed. When I came into the company as a supervisor, obviously I was leading more of a process more than people.
Sure.
As I've grown, it's turned more from process to people. So I've now had to change and shift my thinking into, okay, well, now it's no longer process-driven. It's now people-driven. What do I need to do to get the best out of my team? And so it's now focused on, okay, how do I motivate a staff member that appears to be unmotivated? How do I change or persuade them into thinking differently? How do I motivate or work with team members now that I'm junior to them, but maybe senior to them from a leadership perspective.
Sure.
And that's a different dynamic. So that has been sort of the thing that I've been working on the most as of probably the last maybe 3 to 5 years, because now the expectations have changed for me from a role perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to talk more about the journey to where you are now, right? Because you said just now that you came in as a supervisor.
Yeah.
So I believe you started as an intern.
Yeah, well, yes. So to your point, when I was in college, and again, we talk about networking and getting out there, at the time, NAD had just been created, right?
Okay.
The airport at the time was not commensurate with our tourism product. You know, we had all these beautiful hotels, but we used to have this thing in the airport called Tango Tango. And it used to be where if it was raining, we would have leaks in the building, and that meant everybody needed to get a bucket, a mop. It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
But I came in as an intern in college, and I was studying at the time, so it was sort of going from that theoretical knowledge to the practical knowledge and how it's implemented. So that was a big shift for me. I got paid that summer. I enjoyed it so much. Every Christmas thereafter, I said, listen, I am willing to volunteer my time. I will work for free. I just want the experience because I saw it was that important to my overall development and growth.
I want to pause there for a second. That is something that you will not see much of in this generation. Everything must equate to me being compensated.
Yeah.
That's not my job. That's not my job description. This is not what I'm paid to do. Who you think you is about my pay grade.
Right.
How has the mindset of volunteering your time and the compensation be experience and evolution and learning benefited you today?
It's an investment. And people, to your point, they think I must be compensated. I must have dollars in my pocket or get something in return. The return is the experience. And that investment paid off. After I graduated from college, there was an opportunity. Well, I started off doing something completely different, and I'm sure we'll get into that at some point. But when the opportunity arose and I raised my hand for an interview, well, they know who I was. They knew what my work ethic was. They knew that I would do anything and everything to get the job done. And so it was almost like a no-brainer. Hey, we should hire this young man because we know who he is. We know, what our experience has been with him. And so people need to look at volunteering as an investment. You have to invest in yourself. You have to invest in your experience. And that goes both ways. People get to learn who you are. I've seen it work out so many different times in so many different industries. So you always need to continue to invest in yourself. Don't wait for someone to invest in you. You need to invest in yourself and continue to invest in yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you think then of the investment you made in yourself, I'm sure that investment was not just an investment of time. It was also a sacrifice.
Yes.
Because as a college student coming home for Christmas breaks, that's party time.
Exactly. I try to...
It's time to celebrate, and you've been studying all year long.
Yes.
It's now time to unwind, but you decided, wait a minute. What I see for myself in 10 years is not going to get done if I am in the club every night or this and the next thing. Again, as a personal choice you decided to make. As you look back on your college years, how do you think, if not doing that, where would you think you would be now? If you hadn't made that investment in yourself?
It's a scary place. I don't know. I don't think I would be in the role that I am now.
Wow.
That is certainly for sure. I mean, there have been a number of other instances where I've invested in myself from a monetary value. I mean, thousands of dollars in training, traveling, going to conferences, networking. Again, that investment is multifold and multidimensional, if you will, because it's not just time. Like you said, it's sacrifice.
Yes.
It's I don't want to go. I would love to go to a party at Fluid, right? Young folks
Fluid,
know
by the way,
was a club.
Back in the day. And we are too young to be saying back in the day. But if you've been to Fluid,
you know. If you know, you know.
If you know, you know. It was a time to be had.
Right.
One way in, one way out, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly.
We have evolved, we've elevated now.
Yes.
Indeed. God
I wouldn't be caught dead in the club now. But those were the sacrifices, and it paid off in the long run. People, too often we look at the short-term gain versus the long-term game and playing the long game, right?
Yes.
People like to say chess, not checkers. But you always need to be thinking 2, 3, 4 steps ahead at all times during your career.
I feel like that statement is like a double-edged sword sometimes, right? You want to be thinking 2, 3 steps ahead, but we fail to live in the moment.
Yes.
Right? I remember that day in 7th grade like it was yesterday.
Yeah, me too. Yep.
And I cannot believe that we are 20-some years later and in this part of our life, at this stage in our lives, and it's like So much has happened individually, collectively, in our individual and collective lives that you could honestly miss the season. And in this book, the last chapter is called Serve Your Season. And my mom read this chapter and she's like, young man, this chapter is a direct contradiction to the book. You tell me all book long to shift and move and do,
Right.
and then you're telling me to stay?
Right.
The reason I'm asking people to consider serving the season they are in is because you couldn't get to the point of vice presidency or fatherhood or husbandry if you did not
Right.
serve your previous season well enough
Yeah.
to deserve and earn the next season.
Exactly.
And I feel like we want to achieve so much, and it's important that I become the this and the that, but you're not taking full advantage of where you are now to learn the lessons of the now season. So you can't truly serve the next season until you get this now season first.
It's so funny you should say that because I was just reading something from the CEO at Delta, and he was something on LinkedIn. He made a post basically saying that the most important job you have is the one you have right now.
Right now.
You cannot focus on something in the past. You can't focus on something in the future. You won't even be considered for something in the future if what you're not doing, if you're not doing it in a spirit of excellence or doing it to the best of your ability, right? So why should I try to be CEO if I'm, constantly dropping the ball, if I'm showing up late to meetings, if I'm not doing what is expected of me? And two, the season you're in helps to prepare you for the next role,
Absolutely.
right? So, I've had setbacks in my life and in my, in my current, not my current role, obviously, but my current tenure at NAD and an Advantage where it's like, wow, okay, what next, God? Like you brought me here and, everything was going well and then this thing happened and now what?
Yeah.
And, you have a choice during those moments. It's either you sort of fight or flight. You could either feel sorry and wallow and, woe is me. Or you could sort of, shift your focus and shift your mindset and say, okay, well, what can I do now to, put that behind me? How do we move forward into the future? So it's serving your season is critically important, and people need to realize, listen, success does not come overnight.
Absolutely.
It is not a linear path. You could you could be on a skyrocket, and then the next day you could be in the valley, right? So it's just a part of the journey, but you have to learn to embrace the journey.
Absolutely. I want to talk about a word you just used. You used the word setback.
Yeah.
And I define setbacks and obstacles as setups and opportunities without makeup.
Yes.
Right? It's like, well, let's go into the barber to get our shape up.
Right.
So before I go into the barber, I was feeling a little humdrum, a little, whatever. But when I come with that chair, that's a different thing,
Stands out.
right? And I feel like people don't look at the setback as the setup.
Yes.
Or the obstacle as the opportunity. If you look at everything that happens to you in life as an opportunity to elevate, to get better, to get stronger, you only get better, elevate, and get stronger.
Yes.
Talk about the setback that you're referencing, though. What
Sure.
happened when it was like, boy, I get this thing and I'm going to go down to talk about that?
So I was about 4 or 5 years into my tenure at NAD. I'd been a supervisor. I had changed roles. So I came in as a duty supervisor. They're the ones that manage the entire operation, and if something happens, they basically put the fire out before it becomes too big of a fire, and there's business continuity, the whole thing. I had changed roles, went into an airside position. I was there for a while, and this opportunity came up to go to one of the family islands to work, and it was a promotion for me at the time. It was a managerial promotion. So I was like, okay, great. So I get there. I was traveling because I'd just spoken at some conference. Literally went from the conference, I get a call saying, hey, you need to be, it was in Abaco, so we had to get there, and okay, great. So I basically went home one night, packed up all my belongings. I was on a plane maybe a day or two later. I was there for a couple of months, and there was just basically some changes that occurred. I can't get into all the details, but essentially my promotion was sort of like, put on pause, and now it was like, okay, well, that's no longer happening. So it was almost like a promotion for a couple of months, and then it was like, okay, you got demoted in a sense, if you want to call it that, back to a supervisor position. So I was like, okay, God, you brought me here, made me feel dead good. Life was good, things were working, and now it's like this holding pattern, if you will, like, what's gonna happen?
Sure.
And so it was a bit of a state of shock for me because I was so excited about this new role. I had such high, lofty goals and things that I wanted to do, and it just was like someone pulled the rug out from underneath me and, downward I fell. But from there, it was like, okay, what do I do? And it was a bit of a soul-searching period for me. It was like, okay, do I wallow? I had to wallow for one. I give myself, and sometimes you just have to give yourself one day to catch yourself.
grace,
And listen, you cry, you get it out your system. Okay, all right, what we could do now? We could man up and figure it out. And that's what I did. I put my head down. Luckily, it wasn't like my role at NAD had suffered in any way, so I just went back into that role. And I said, I'm going to work, and I guess I could do what I got to do.
Yes.
And the next role I have will be even greater. And within a year or so, I was promoted again back to manager. But it was like God showing me and preparing me to say, well, yeah, you have some setbacks in life, son. That's regardless of whatever role you're in, whatever outside even work, you're gonna have some setbacks.
Yes.
Right now, my wife and I were building a house. There's been setbacks, but it was like, okay, what do? I continue to look forward at all times. I don't take the setback as something that, a temporary pause does not mean no from God.
Absolutely.
It means maybe you're not ready yet. Maybe you need to grow, but it just means, you have to continue to move forward and look to the future.
I feel like that point right there is so paramount because there's so many times in my life when I thought I was ready. I was certain that I was ready. And God would very, very boldly remind me, sir. And whenever God called me sir,
Right.
because
Where
you get off at.
Right.
But whenever he calls me sir, I just know, sorry about that, sir. I didn't mean to offend you. Get me together.
Right.
And I think I've had to come full circle with my understanding God's language to me because I would be offended by him telling me I wasn't ready when I felt like I was.
Right.
And there were things that I have access to now. And he said to me in 2020, if I gave you this now, if I give you this then, you would have run or run out.
Right.
And I think when you learn in this leadership journey that the things that we feel ready for, that we believe we're ready for, and don't get, it's because God knows we're not ready for it.
Right.
And if he had released it to you then, you would have messed it up.
Yes.
So now you have been promoted and demoted and promoted again.
Yes.
At this promotion, you're now at what level in your career?
So I'm at the vice president level now.
I mean, at the time that you
Oh,
were,
so I was.
you came
So I
back.
basically went from supervisor to manager. I was in that role for maybe a year and a half or 2 years, and a director position came available. So this is a crazy story. So the director position becomes available. I apply. The role came out in January or maybe December of 2019. So just follow me,
Yes.
because I think everybody knows where the story is going. I apply, we interview in about February. I get promoted on April 1st, 2020. The country's borders closed March 31st, 2020.
Yes.
So I've been promoted as a director of a terminal that has no people because the country is closed. So I get promoted during a pandemic.
Yes.
First of all, thank God. Who gets promoted during a pandemic when
Yes.
there's no money making, everything is shut down? Crazy story.
But specifically though, in the role that brings the people in.
Right. So
You
in a role that basically is to facilitate, and I'll tell you the story how God used me. So before this, I was very sort of change averse. I am very structured in the way you've done my disc assessment,
Yes,
so you know
yes.
what it says. We're not going to put that out there. But it's I like a structured sort of pace. I like things, A has to go to B has to go to C, and there's a logical conclusion. And I think part of that is just because regulatory, I've been trained in that way, so I expect it to go in that way. God say, okay, well, you don't like change? Good. I could give you a change every day for the next 8 months.
Wow.
And what happened during that time is I actually had to work on not a redevelopment, but a reopening plan. So I had to learn about what COVID was doing. The information was changing on an hourly basis. We had to put together a plan that not only impacted NAD and how do we keep our team safe, but how do we keep the traveling public safe? And how do I keep all the airport workers safe? And so for the next 3 or 4 months, we met almost on a daily basis about, okay, mask use, we have to put up barriers, we need to put down social distance markers. And it was God was stretching me.
Yes.
That's the only way I could describe it. Yes. I mean, I've never felt more uncomfortable, but at the end of it, there was just this level of, okay, that's a change. Let's just adapt. Let's just pivot. Let's just change and do what we got to do. And again, we talk about preparing. If God hadn't done that, I would not have been able to ascend to this role. There's no way, shape, or fashion or form. It just would not have happened.
You talked about being uncomfortable. Ladies and gentlemen, the worst thing you can do to yourself is rest in your comfort zone. I told you earlier that if you're not learning, you're dead. Your comfort zone is where you go to die. You sit there and you wait for death. And the God that I know, the God that made you and made me, did not give you the spirit of death. He has given you the power to take dominion of the entire earth. And I think we limit that statement. You know how big Earth is? Like Google Earth. Like Google the Earth.
Right.
And ask Google, how big is the Earth? And then put that into perspective. Your dominion is earthly. The entire planet belongs to you. But you are sitting home right now in the same pants you had on last week Thursday.
Right.
And this is not a place of judgment. This is a place of evolution. And so I want you to consider to yourself now, what has your comfort zone done for you lately, like Janet Jackson would say? It has done nothing for you, nothing to you, nothing with you, but left you right where it met you. You need to understand that being uncomfortable is the only way you grow. It's the only way you can actually walk into your leadership journey. So Jonathan, talk about that discomfort, if you will. How does that discomfort become now fuel for your fire?
So going through that process, like I said, it was things changing all the time. But now I've learned to sort of, I won't say enjoy. No one enjoys being uncomfortable, right? No one, it's like going to the gym and your trainer saying, do another 10 push-ups.
Yes.
Bro,
So
I couldn't do the first 10.
I'm about to die.
Exactly. My heart bursting open, right? But, you know, that has done for me is, you know, it has forced me into a way of, if sometimes we don't like to have uncomfortable conversations, for example. We don't like to tell people when they're messing up, or, and I'm not saying you tell them and you cuss them out. And
Sure.
You have to do it in the spirit of love, obviously. But what it has done for me is I'm no longer, I wouldn't say afraid, I'm no longer uncomfortable being uncomfortable. And I understand being uncomfortable is a part of that growth.
Naturally.
I can get the 6-pack abs if I don't go in the gym and be
Yes.
uncomfortable doing 1,000 sit-ups. And it's the same way. I don't mind reaching out to my team and saying, hey, we dropped the ball on this, or hey, I dropped the ball on this, because sometimes that might mean me saying as a leader, I have failed you guys, or I haven't done something that I should have done. And I think what that has done for me is just put me in such a place where sort of a certain set of introspection, and that it's given me just to look at a situation and sort of analyze it from a space of, okay, maybe my team didn't do this, but what did I do as a leader to either prep them? Did I give them enough resources? It's just given me a sort of a newfound perspective that, like I say, if God had not put me in that position, I would have not been able to sort of look at things the way I do now.
Yes.
Yeah.
What you're describing is what I call a superpower. It's the word vulnerability.
Yeah.
Right? And people, especially males in leadership, shy away from being vulnerable.
We're not
with
empathetic.
anything.
Yeah.
Right? Because if I show you any element of, I don't have my
Weakness.
stuff together, any weakness, any opportunity, I am less than.
Yeah.
How have you utilized the power of vulnerability to get you to this point?
Listen, sometimes, and people think leadership is it's a very difficult thing, but people, at its very core element, I think I look at it from a human perspective. I take the job out of it, whether you are the CEO, whether you are the guy taking out the trash at the end of the day, we're all human. I am human as a leader. That means I'm not always going to get it right.
Yes.
That means I don't always know the answer. That means I can't figure it out. That's why we're a team, right? And I think what that has done for me is just sort of humanize my leadership, if you will. I'm empathetic to, now, you know, sometimes people try to run a game and things on you, so you gotta be sharp to that. But at the end of the day, I'm not afraid to say, I'm sorry, I missed, or I didn't understand this maybe clearly enough. But also, too, I can sort of connect with my team in a way, on an emotional, sort of intelligent sort of way, and understand them more, and just give them what they need. And so that vulnerability has really helped me, particularly, like I said, when you lead a team of 100 plus people, there's a lot of people, like just a lot of people things, right? And just life gets in the way.
Yes.
But we certainly, you know, use that and understand that, and that has been, I don't know, God has done some things, and
He is awesome.
yeah, it's just, I get chills thinking about how He has brought me to this place. I still have a lot to learn and to grow into, but certainly it's been beneficial thus far.
Yeah. So let's talk, Jonathan, about the millennial aspect of your leadership now, because you are our generation that is leading at least three other generations at the same time. Our parents are a certain age, and you still have employees that could be their company.
Yes.
You're also leading people that are my brother's age.
Yes.
And that's an entirely different world.
Oh my God.
Right? How is someone from the middle of those 2-3 generations been able to navigate that space with a level of excellence and determination?
I call us the middle child.
Yes.
So we are the middle child. It is twofold, and you're absolutely right. And it takes two sort of different approaches. So I'll start with I don't want to call it older generation, but the generation before us. I think that's the best way to describe it before I get beat up in the parking lot. So one of the things that, since I've came in as a supervisor, I've always had to work with and lead, to some degree, people who are older than me. The issue for younger generations is we tend to think that we know it all, and we coming in, guns blazing. Listen, y'all still using paper for this?
Yeah.
Just get this app. I could do it. It could be.
There's an app for that.
There is. It probably is,
Yeah.
right? And I don't want to dismiss that because we are looking at it from a place of efficiency, productivity. We trying to get it in, get it out. But we cannot devalue the experience of that older generation. They have been in it for 15, 20, probably longer than we either probably been alive. So I cannot go into their space and say, Miss Shirley, I hear you. You've been there from 1964, but this wrong and this no, because then that automatically pits us against each other, right? It's like, well, it's my way or the highway. That does not create a good team dynamic. So the first thing I always try to do with that generation is, okay, what has your experience been? Let me understand why you've been doing it in this way, because maybe there is a reason that's something that I might not be privy to, right? These people are, particularly in certain areas, they're living this day in, day out, and they're seeing it from a different perspective than I'm seeing it. So there might be some reason or rationale why she does it this way. Now, once I have an understanding of that, then I can make more of an informed decision to say, okay, well, Ms. Shirley, I see why you did it that way. Here's how I think we can work together and pivot on this. So it's like you bringing them along the journey with you to make the change. And it's not that you discredit them or devalue their experience in any way. Now they feel as though they've been brought on as a part of the process. Now, moving to my, I call them the Tide Pod generation, because I think it was them who used to eat the Tide Pods, right?
Yes.
So these folks, whereas you had for Miss Shirley and those, God, I really hope there's not a Miss Shirley watching this, but for Miss Shirley and those who are loyal, they come into work. These said, if you ain't making sense, I ain't coming to work. If I find my next job next week, all the best to you.
They never telling you?
And if I come and
if I 4 days?
Exactly.
Wow.
So it's a completely different generation, but they have their value as well. And what they are looking for from a role is far, in ways similar, but a little bit different than the older generation. So they want to know that in most instances, their work is meaningful. They want to have a cause to be behind. They want to know that I'm just doing this for doing this sake, that this actually will have impact. And they want to see action. Because the minute you tell me to do something and I don't see it being actioned, or, for a good example is, okay, you tell me to report a leak on, someone spilled something on the floor. And if ain't nobody mop it up, well, y'all ain't got to worry about that no more ever again, because I ain't reporting it no more, because y'all clearly you're not serious about the action. So to them, you need to prove that there's action behind the work that you're doing, that the work is meaningful, and that it's actually going to make a difference in a life somewhere. So it's just trying to bridge those gaps and take everyone along on the journey. It is difficult. I won't say that, I have the magic pill that I have, I just give it to everybody and, everybody is kumbaya. But it takes intentional work. You have to and then you have to speak to people too, right? You have to understand and care. Like I just can't say from, I'm in the White House and you guys just need to do this and off you go. And not understand what resources they need or how it's impacting them. You need to stay with them along the journey as well.
Absolutely. I think every human being on the planet wants 3 things. They want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to know that they add value. They want to know that you see the value in them. And I think as leaders, when we start to see people as a means to an end versus the value they bring and the value they add, the eminent value, Because if they weren't valuable, why would you have them?
Right.
And that speaks more to the leader than it does the individual.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I no longer serve you, why would you have me around?
Mm-hmm.
Right? When you think of connection with people, people being people, right? There's a song that comes in the radio commercial, people helping people
Yes.
to help themselves. And I love that commercial because it's so simple, but it's like
profound.
when you as a leader recognize the value you add to someone by simply seeing them, by simply recognizing the work they did today, by saying to them, there would be no way that I could have done that without your help.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
How has that one phrase saved your journey in leadership?
1,000,000 times over. And part of it, there's a management principle that we have called management by walking around. And it's a very simple sort of concept. You literally walk around and you talk to people. Hey, how's your day going? How's your family doing?
Yes.
People want to know that I care about you beyond just work. And so it's just speaking with people, talking to people on a human level. Hey, how's everything going? Do you have everything you need to do the job well? You don't? Okay, how can I help you get that? And in some respects, I can help. In some respects, I might not be able to based on, financial commitments and budgets and all of that. But it has been such a game changer because all of a sudden now people think, hey, this guy actually talked to me and he cares about what I do on a daily basis, no matter how small it may be or how big it may be. He's actually vested in my success.
Yes.
Part of that too is also just making sure from, a training and development standpoint. If you're, we deal with people, like I said, all day long. We welcome, during busy times, upwards of maybe 17 to 20,000 people, through the airport.
Yes.
That's Bahamians, that's visitors, etc. How can I expect my team to provide them with a good customer service if I don't care about my team?
Absolutely.
These are the people that are going to be, I might interact with maybe, call it 15, 20 people a day at most. These are the people who are seeing hundreds of people in an hour.
Wow.
And so if I don't treat them with the dignity, the respect they need, how can I expect them to pass it on to the passenger or to the guest or the airport user?
Yes.
So it's just simple things that make the world a difference in these people's lives.
As a millennial leader, Jonathan, what keeps you up at night? What's constantly on your mind as you think about your role as their leader?
I think about a couple of things. One is just, first of all, I feel the weight of that responsibility because I understand that what I do or don't do has the ability to impact hundreds of lives. And I say hundreds, even though I say I have a team of 100. Well, if that person is impacted in some way, their family is now impacted, or their cousin or whomever, right? So I think about, one, how do I continue to enrich their lives? And that's not only from a professional standpoint, but just, hey, is there something I can pray for you about? Something, when you have a big team and it ranges from all walks of life, from all communities, people have real issues and real problems. So sometimes some of the stories, obviously I can't share what they are, but some of the stories are heartbreaking. So those, how do I position myself and help them? It's always, I believe in being a selfless leader. I put myself last. If we have a box of pizza and it's 50 us, 49 y'all can eat, and if there's anything left over, I'll eat. And if not, then I could go without. I'll figure it out. So it's always just, how can I meet their needs professionally, to some respects, personally. So that's one thing. The next thing is also too, outside of that, I have the traveling public that I'm responsible for. So am I doing everything that I need to make sure that I keep the traveling public safe day in and day out? That is, there's all sorts of things that happens and comes with that.
Absolutely.
And then three, though, is how do I make the country better? And I say that from the standpoint, what we do at the airport or not do at the airport has the ability to make the tourism product be better. How do I always ensure that there's a level of efficiency and safety and all these things that come along with it, right? So I have a lot of things, and then, outside of that, I have my family that also keeps me up at night too. So, there's this ongoing circle of just things that go on in my mind. I don't sleep as much as I used to, but that's okay. I think that's just a part of it, and God will give me the strength and
Absolutely.
that I need to get through day to day. Yeah.
You started our conversation by saying we're changing the world.
Yes.
That's a heavy statement and
Yes.
also a heavy task.
People don't believe that, but yeah, we are.
What do you think your legacy is or will be when it's all said and done? What would Jonathan Neal Hanna have contributed to the world?
I would like for my legacy to be, I don't want to say what it was because I'm not done yet.
Sure.
And sort of go a little bit into, I don't know, have you ever seen Hamilton?
I have.
Okay, so I'm not going to spoil it for people who have not seen Hamilton, but I implore you, it's the first Broadway show I've ever seen. But in Hamilton, there's a theme about ambition, and there's a song that talks about, he was writing, was it the Constitution? Writing the Constitution and talking about running out of time. Like they say, you're writing like you're running out of time. We think we have more time than we actually have. Like, first of all, today wasn't promised to me. In the next hour might not be promised to me. So we don't have as much time as we think. That's the first thing. But for me, it is, how can I die empty? I want to leave this earth knowing that all the talents and everything that God has blessed me with, I have used to the fullest and maximum ability that He has given me.
Jesus.
And for me, that means, I assume it's going to be in something in the airport. Where, like, I feel like God has brought me along this journey for a reason, because I would not be in the airport if it wasn't for me to be there. But I would like for me to leave this airport and this space, one, impacting lives in a positive way, whether that's professionally, personally, and that's not just, I say, we say the airport, but there's a knock-on effect to the community, right? Two, I want the airport to be better than when I met it.
Yes.
And better is relative. I know it, but I want to be more efficient. I want to be able to welcome more persons. I want us to be a spirit of just customer excellence, because you and I have had the conversations about customer service in this country. It is not where it needs to be. And for as expensive a country as we need to be, that is, I think, one that's going to differentiate us to be a competitive advantage for us.
Absolutely.
But for my legacy, I want it to be where I've impacted lives in a positive way, that people will say that he was a fair person, that, I can't promise the world to everybody. Everybody think, he didn't approve that one thing, so he's the worst person on the plate. Yeah, okay, that's okay. But at the end of the day, I want to leave this world empty, using all the talents that God has given me, and for the betterment of my community and for the betterment of my country.
Absolutely.
Like, I could have the opportunity to stay away, but I chose to come back home because I want this little Bahamas. I think we certainly punch above our weight, despite our size. And I think there's a lot of positive things that we can do to impact our community. Yeah.
You mentioned something just now that is so important. You talked about dying empty.
Yeah.
There is so much in you that this world absolutely needs to have. And you've allowed someone, some circumstance, some issue to diminish that which God has put in you. And until and unless you realize that we need what you have, you wouldn't be here if there was no need for you. You wouldn't be here if your talent, your gift, your offering wasn't necessary to the humanity, to the ongoing of humanity. And when you focus on dying empty, leaving the landscape better than you met it, when you focus on intentionally changing something for the better, everything around you gets better. When you allow that circumstance to limit, to define, to diminish, to constrain you, you have said to the thing, you win and I lose. As you navigate this level of your leadership journey, because I believe, brother, that this is still yet the beginning for you. As much as you have accomplished, as much as you've amassed, what are you looking forward to most for your future in leadership?
Oh boy, that's a good one. For me, I think the next, we could talk about it. The next step, obviously, is I'm one rung below CEO. That's just a fact. Whether, it is, to me, it was unfathomable to be where I am. When I got the role, I was just turning 35 or something. I got 36, I can't remember what it was. To think that is attainable now, this would have been, like, if someone had told me when we were in seventh grade, at some point you would be VP, I would have said, where do I sign up?
Right.
Because I didn't even think then that this was attainable now. now to think that I could potentially be that. Obviously, there's a number, I have a number of colleagues that are equally as qualified and I think would do an equally as well role, a good role. But to think that that is a possibility, it excites me, right?
Yeah.
Because, there's certain ideas that you have that I think could be great to enact. You look at what others are doing in the space around, and it's just like, everybody has that dream. I started off, when I was a young kid, my dad wanted to be a pilot. My grandmother didn't allow him. That's a story for another day. She always had this thing. She says, you could crash into my house, which is the silliest thing. But he sort of put this passion into me, and it just grew from a time. So when I was 7, I used to love to go to the airport and just watch planes land and take off all day. I still do that now. Like when I have a bad day, I go out there, and that's my sort of safe space. But to think that I could potentially be that is very exciting for me. Obviously, even outside of that, I think you and I have spoken about other endeavors that I'd love to get into and grow into, because I think God has sort of put that seed into me, and I think there's something to be explored there. I'm hoping that He reveals it a little bit more clearer. Like I tell God, listen, put it in neon lights, because your brother can't read between the lines. I don't do well with that. But I think there's just a host of other opportunities out there, and then obviously too, I look forward to leading my family. Like my kids, my youngest daughter, who was just born yesterday, could be 3 this year.
Wow.
So I look forward to just trying to provide them with the best opportunities I can provide as a dad, as a husband, and father. So I'm just really excited about where God is going to lead me. I don't know what that's going to be, but I will continue to just ask that He orders my steps, and I can trust the path, and we'll see where we end up.
Absolutely. I think as we wrap this conversation up, Jonathan, what I've observed in you over the 20-some years we've been friends and brothers is that you bring a level of humanity to whatever you do.
Yeah.
And that humanity is missing from leadership today. It's a part of why the world is in such a leadership crisis, because people see processes over people. They see results over the person bringing them the results. Where does your humanity and leadership come from? And I'll have my final question for you.
Yeah, I think that's just... I think some of these things God puts in you, and they're just innate. But also, too, my grandparents, I spent a lot of time growing up with both my grandmother on my mom's side and my dad's side. And they just had this spirit of giving. Like, one of my grandmothers was in Bamboo Town, South Beach. The other was on Montreal Avenue. If you've just turned onto Montreal Avenue from Wolf Road, it's I don't know where they chose this color. The ugliest greenhouse on the left-hand side is the second house on the left. So if you pass it, you can see it, and you can say, that's where Miss Hanna, when Hanna used to live. But they used to take in people and feed them. Wow. I used to go to soup kitchen when I was younger and feed the community and walk the community at Bethel Baptist Church. And I think it's just sort of knowing that, listen, Jesus washed feet, right? We're here to serve. At the end of the day, we're here to serve. Who am I to say I don't want to serve?
Yes.
Like, where do I get off at saying? So I think God places us in different communities to touch the people that are in that community. I'm at the airport to help those in that community. And I think that's just wherever I go, I just say, what can I do to help? And that could be something as small as saying, I'm going to pray for you. That could just be having a conversation. That could be, donating to something. But I think that's where it comes from. It's just watching my parents, my grandparents, meet people where they were and do the most that they could do for those persons at that time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you change the world. You take what's in front of you and you make it better. You take what's in front of you and you help to elevate it, to take it to its next level. I think as leaders, we look at, I must change the world, as some, I have to be in the Bahamas and go to Japan and save them. Whatever is in your purview, whatever is in your hand right now, that is the world you've been called to change. And when you decide, you have to make an active, intentional choice to be better, to cause somebody else to be best. And when you move from a place of selfish leadership to selfless leadership, this entire planet is changed. Any final thoughts for our audience, Jonathan?
Listen, I think, just one of the big takeaways is don't let anybody else dictate where you go. And I mean that from, if you have a boss who you might not like or you don't work well with, ultimately you are responsible for where you go. And so do not continue to invest in yourself, continue to put God first, pray that He will direct your path, not your path. But those are the big takeaways for me. That's just, I think, the basis of good leadership is, one, believing in God and asking Him to direct your path, but two, always continue to invest and put, know who can control your destiny better than you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like we have this, anyway, we could talk about that for hours, but this spirit of, oh, someone have to do something for me. No, do something for yourself.
Yes. Do something for you. Do something for you.
Right.
How about that?
Right.
Jonathan, Johnny, as I would affectionately call you, this has been such an incredible opportunity. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here today, to be vulnerable, to share your story and leadership, to help somebody else who I'm sure, if they're watching today, listening today, have found themselves in your story
you.
and are able to take their leadership now to the next level. Thank you for agreeing to put yourself on the spot in this way, because this is what leaders do. Leaders look at how they can make the landscape better. They accept vulnerability and they empower somebody else. So thank you very much, my brother.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the iLEAD podcast, where you have come to learn, empower, adapt, and disrupt. As you move forward from today's conversation, as you move into the world, as you take your next step, as you venture out into leadership even further, remember two things. One, put God first. The second, put others right after Him. If you lead selflessly, if you put all you have into all you can do, everything gets better. It has been my absolute pleasure to have you join us for this conversation. We have been talking to Jonathan Neil Hanna about the diary of a millennial leader, the stresses, the joys, all of it all that goes into that. And it's been such a wonderful pleasure and honor to have you join us today. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for our next episode, where you can find us wherever you find podcasts. That's where we will be. God bless you. Continue to lead your way forward.